Children do not have the same brains as adults, and for the most part, we assume that makes them dumber versions of ourselves. But with brain differences comes a divergence in perception. My name is Jonah Primo, and welcome to the Overexamined Life. I remember one of the first courses in my philosophy degree introduced us to the idea that no two people experience the world in exactly the same way. Color is a great example of this. My idea of blue may look slightly different to yours because of minor differences in the way our brains are constructed. But because this is a subjective experience, we'll never be able to fully articulate what blue looks like to each other. But children have vastly different brains to adults because their brains are so underdeveloped. And if you think about it, an underdeveloped brain is actually a very significant kind of neurodivergence from the norm, given that the norm is an adult brain. And so if our brain is responsible for our perception of reality, it has to follow that a child's perception of reality is different from the norm. Sometimes it's purely a deficiency because of a physical immaturity. This is obvious when you're dealing with babies who start life in a state of object impermanence. That means if they cannot sense something, see it, hear it, feel it, they believe it has disappeared. You can have a lot of fun at their expense abusing this knowledge. Simply holding a book in front of a baby's parent's face will put them in a state of sheer panic as they believe you are a malevolent wizard whose evil spell has caused their mother to cease to exist. We play this game with babies knowing that their mother still exists in some form in three-dimensional space and that the dumb baby is just wrong. But I think you could make a case that there will be some situations in which a grown adult's perception of reality may in fact be further from the truth than a child's. And here's why. But first we need to start with the core premise that nobody is actually seeing reality. We're just seeing concepts. Now, this is commonly agreed upon by scholars of many disparate schools. Philosopher Immanuel Kant says, "We can never, even by the strictest examination, get beyond the limits of sensibility to the objects themselves, but only to how they appear to us." End quote. Essentially, he is saying we're not interacting with the truth, but our own hallucination of reality as filtered through our senses and our brain's way of interpreting the information given to us by our senses. Let's look at another school. In Buddhism, our journey is to free ourselves from the concepts we create, we interpret, we project, and to slowly break things down into a more free-flowing worldview, a non-dual worldview, where mind is not separate to body. I am not separate to you. In Buddhism, reality is something dynamic, interdependent, and fluid that takes years of practice to see, if it is possible to see at all. And then finally, from a science point of view, somewhere in the dance between physics and neuroscience, we quite clearly realize we're not even close to perceiving the truth. And again, color is an excellent way of demonstrating this. This PlayStation controller is red. But the idea of red is our shortcut. What is actually here is a 650 nanometer wavelength with a 440 terahertz frequency. But nobody sees the individual light waves. We interpret them as color. Thomas Young, a physicist from the 18th century who helped lay the foundations of color theory, puts it beautifully, saying, quote, "Color is the product of the interaction of light with the perceiving eye, not a property of the object itself." End quote. So this is my key point. As we grow older and we come across the same sensory stimuli, we get better at forming concepts doubling down on the shortcuts our brain takes to help us understand the world. But the fact is, these are shortcuts to help us survive, to function in civilization, and to succeed in society. But truth has nothing to do with it. However, a child has had less time to solidify concepts in their mind. Everything is novel and is interpreted and processed without being colored by their perceptual history, without being influenced by years of cognitive bias. So there is a chance that they see the world more clearly with their fresh eyes and brains than we do. And we should consider taking them seriously when they say something that sounds stupid. It's only stupid based on an adult worldview. And sooner or later, for better or worse, they'll be trained out of that kind of thinking. When I was working at Waking Up, a listener once sent me a story that really stuck with me about her nephew who was driving with her through the Colorado mountains. And as the clouds wrapped around the tops of the mountains, he looked out of the window and yelled, "Look, the mountains are touching the sky." She made the point that adults would invariably perceive the clouds as being low to the ground. But his child's mind had perceived the reverse, the mountains straining, reaching up to the heavens and catching them. I just came back from a hike in New Zealand, and at one point we ran into a young family who had stopped for lunch. The mum was carrying her daughter's bag for her and rummaging through it and looking for food. And instead of a peanut butter sandwich, she pulled out a giant grey hole punch. It must have weighed 3 kilos. She said, "Samantha, why the hell did you pack a hole punch for the hike? You made me lug this hole punch halfway up a mountain." And Samantha just gave a wry smile and did a handstand. Sure, maybe that backpack space could have been better occupied with something more pragmatic, say water. But maybe a hole punch was exactly what was needed for a situation that no adult could even comprehend. Maybe Samantha knows something we don't. My name is Jonah Primo. This is the Overexamined Life. See you next time.